Today, if there was any doubt about the political divide in the Republican Party right now, it has been drawn very clearly by two men who were once in lockstep. And the chasm is wide and deep. Both Donald Trump and Mike Pence in Washington yesterday, and very different views of America from them. Trump, despite all the evidence against the big lie, didn't retreat. He doubled down.
I ran the first time and I won. Then I ran a second time and I did much better. We got millions and millions more votes. And you know what? That's going to be a story for a long time. What a disgrace it was. But we may just have to do it again.
His speech, notably dark and negative, Politico's Playbook reported, Trump spoke of an America whose streets are riddled with needles and soaked with the blood of innocent victims. He warned of sadists who prey on children and drugged out lunatics who attack innocent victims at random, and said the dangerously deranged roam our streets with impunity. It made the American carnage vision from his inaugural speech feel positively sunny in comparison, and could provide a preview of a potential 2024 campaign. For more, I'm joined by Michael Steele, former chairman of the RNC and an MSNBC political analyst, and Jim Messina, CEO of the Messina Group, who ran President Obama's 2012 campaign and served as the deputy chief of staff for operations in the White House. Well, not exactly, Jim Messina, a message of hope, is it?
No, it is not. You're seeing a Republican Party ripped apart by its internal divisions. You see Pence talking about the future. I think Michael and I will both agree. You win presidential campaigns talking about your vision for the future. Donald Trump doesn't have one. He just wants to litigate the past. And his whole attack on crime is incredibly interesting because, Chris, as you reported, this whole crime wave started while Trump was president. The facts don't seem to matter to him. All he wants to do is scare voters. And this fight about positivity versus, dragging everything into the sewer is going to be the story of the modern day Republican primary and who their nominee is in 2024.
Is that really a look at what we're going to be seeing in 2024? Because people are saying he could announce any time now. It's going to be a very long couple of years, Michael Steele.
Yeah, I think it is the vision he has going into 2024. It is a backward look, but it's also tagged to what he believes his base voters think and feel about this country right now. They genuinely believe that, they're needle-ridden streets. There are people who are, sadists who are preying on children. We've heard some of this narrative, Chris, already play out in the transgender debate. So he's going to continue to juxtapose a sort of cultural war ethic, about what's going on culturally up against the backdrop of the 2020 election and motivate his base to be there. Now, I'm still not convinced he jumps in because Trump is, if not afraid of losing. And he's also not inclined to do the work. So the reality still remains that I think he's going to hold his position as long as he can to sort of ferret out the field that he wants that's going to best represent the Trumpian vision of America should he not get in. If he can't find that, then maybe he does. But he doesn't see it in the vice president, for sure. And he doesn't see it in DeSantis as much as he may, I like Governor DeSantis. We know that's not necessarily the case. So he's going to play his cards as closely as he can. And this is a tell from what we saw yesterday of how he looks at things right now.
Before the speech, President Biden kind of tore into his predecessor about the violence on January 6th against the police. Let me just play a little bit of what the president now had to say.
The Capitol Police, the D.C. Metropolitan Police, other law enforcement agencies were attacked and assaulted before our very eyes, speared, sprayed, stomped on, brutalized. And lives were lost. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-cop. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-democracy. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-American.
So clearly that's the message Biden wants to get out there. He was preemptively answering what he knew that Donald Trump would say. Is that the right message from him, Jim?
Absolutely. This is a ground that he feels very strong on. As a senator, he was the best friend of the police unions, of the firefighter unions. He wants to have this fight with Trump because he's morally outraged by what Trump did, and because also it makes smart political sense. You want to take the issue off the table. He knows Trump is going to try to go at him on crime, and he's going to try to put the former president, back on his haunches. I think it's very smart. I think it was very well done, and it's very classic Joe Biden.
Can we get away from who the specific candidates are for just a minute, Michael Steele? And, the reality of the world we live in, which is, and we all know the challenges that are facing Democrats here, which economy first and foremost among them, but you also have indications of increasing attention being paid to what's being said by the January 6th committee. So what are the conversations that are going on behind the scenes? Where is the 2024 election going to be won? On what message?
I think before you get to 2024, Republicans are concerned about 2022.
How concerned, Michael?
Of it is,
because this was supposed to be theirs to lose. So how concerned?
Well, they're concerned because the Senate was something that was going to be the cherry on the top. Not so much now. The House dynamics are very different, given the kinds of candidates who are winning primaries. Maryland is no exception to that after our primary a couple of weeks ago. So the reality for Republicans is very much changed when you layer on top of the kind of candidates that are carrying the standard going into 22. And you talk about the big issues coming out of the Supreme Court. Yes, the economy is in play, but what we're seeing in some of the polling, Chris, is that voters are bifurcating. They're saying, I'm not happy with where things are on the economy, but what I'm seeing coming at me this November is concerning, and how that plays out in the vote is very much going to give us a setup for 2024. You don't get to 2024 without going through 2022 with a high degree of success from the Republican perspective. It's not just winning the House, it's winning it big. And that's something that's a question for them right now.
Michael Steele, Jim Messina, thank you guys. Appreciate